Greetings, students. I hope this finds you doing well, wherever you now find you. And we want to continue to talk about the Upanishads. And today I want to focus on the idea of non-dualism and non-dualistic philosophy and what that means. So first, let's consider this quote. The Atman is not like this, not like this, for there is no other besides this Brahman. Therefore it is said, it is not like this. Now in this philosophy, at the heart of the matter is the fact that we have forgotten who we really are. The true self is that which is always subject and never object. You are never really an object to yourself, no matter how far you push it, right? Remember the awareness of the pen. I'm aware of the pen, and now I can be aware that I'm aware of the pen. And if I really calm down and concentrate, I can be aware that I'm aware that I'm aware of the pen. And as far back as you push that, there's this basic witnessing awareness. And the question is, who are you that is aware? So this gives us a philosophy as intensely personal in a universal sense. That sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Intensely personal in a universal sense. It seems like a contradiction until you understand exactly what they're saying. The Darshana talks about you, but you are not an object or a thing. You will hear someone talk about the human person or human beings. Now, what is that? Have you ever met human beings? I mean, like just in general? Or persons in general? Or have you ever met the human person? That is some kind of funny object, the human person in general, as it were. Someone will say, human beings always act this way. Have you ever met all human beings? What does that even mean? Most people act this way, someone will say. And have you ever met most people? All of these are unreal abstractions. What is not unreal is you and your essential experience of subjectivity. Not in an idiosyncratic sense, as we've talked about before, but in the sense of being the ultimate self, the pure self, which never becomes an object. So the qualitative experience of the subject is the major concern of the darshana we find in the Upanishads. Not what this person goes through, or that person goes through, or even what most people go through, but what you and I go through. And remember, a major thought, or the major thought, bondage to limited ways of experiencing the true self is the cause of suffering. So, make sure you have your book with you. Remember, you're always supposed to bring your book to class. And I see you out there, you got your book, hold it up and show it to me. Oh wait, you can't. We're in a worldwide plague and I'm teaching from my bedroom. So it goes. Anyway, if you turn to page 107, at the bottom, you see this passage. It is not speech which we should want to know. We should know the speaker. It is not things seen which we should want to know. We should know the seer. It is not sounds which we should want to know. We should know the hearer. It is not mind which we should want to know. We should know the thinker. Again, there's this idea of ultimate subjectivity here. Now flip to page 132. Okay? And on 132, about a third of the way down, we see this. As when a lump of salt is thrown into water, and therein being dissolved, it cannot be grasped again, but wherever the water is taken, it is found salt. In the same way, O Maitreya, the Supreme Spirit is an ocean of pure consciousness, boundless and infinite, arising out of the elements, and to them it returns again. There is no consciousness after death. Thereupon Maitreya said, I am amazed to hear that after death there is no consciousness. And Yajnavalkya replied, I am not speaking words of amazement, but sufficient for wisdom is what I say. For where there seems to be a duality, there one sees another, one hears another, one feels another's perfume, one thinks of another, one knows another. But when all has become spirit, one's own self, how and whom could one see? Right? There's just you. Right? So there's no objects. Right? How and whom could one hear? How and of whom could one feel the perfume? How and to whom could one speak? How and whom could one know? How can one know him who knows all? How can the knower be known? Right? You can't know the knower. There's just that ultimate witness, like with the pencil when we push back the consciousness. Now flip to page 136. And it says here, there the spirit sees not, but though seeing not, he sees. How could the spirit not see if he is the all? But there is no duality here, nothing apart for him to see. Therefore the spirit feels no perfumes, yet feeling no perfumes, he feels them. How could the spirit feel no perfumes if he is the all? But there is no duality here, no perfumes apart from him to feel. And then the text goes on. Tasting not, yet he tastes. There's no duality here, nothing apart from him to taste. And then it goes through speaking, hearing, thinking, touching, knowing, right? There the spirit knows not, yet knowing not he knows. How could the spirit not know if he is the all? But there is no duality here, nothing apart from him to know. For only where there seems to be a duality, a subject and an object, there one sees another, one feels another, one tastes another, one speaks to another, one listens to another, one touches another, and one knows another. But in the ocean of spirit, the seer is alone, beholding his own immensity. The key point here is that the one is not a numerical one, right? It's not a monism. A monism means, monism is a philosophy where you think the whole universe is made up of one thing, like one substance or one spirit or something like that. Now, when these philosophers talk about Brahman being one, they don't mean it in the sense that there's one big thing that's Brahman. Because if you were aware of one big thing, there'd still be the witness, right? We want to work our way into thinking through that today. So these philosophers call it the one without a second, right? There's no one knowing the one. You can't know the one because you are the one, right? So they say the one is the not to, the one without a second, right? Dvaita means to. A is alpha privative, not to, right? So non-dualism. So often this is called the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, the Vedic teachings on non-dualism. And Advaita Vedanta explains nothing in a quite literal sense, right? Nothing in the sense that there's no thing. There's no thingness, right? There's no things to know. Because if there was something to know, there'd be two. And there's only one, right? My experience of myself as a real thing known as an individual is unreal. Cut it away, right? With the sword of knowledge, as Shankara says, right? The universe is a real thing, or is made up of real things separate from me, outside of me is unreal. Cut it away. And if we realize what is real, everything as a thing vanishes. Even oneness vanishes. And what we have is not oneness, because that would be a thing too, but the not to, a non-dualism. So one of the first things to consider is that this is not a philosophy of oneness, where everything sort of becomes this one big thing called Brahman. Instead, Brahman is not the one, but the not to. And the philosopher of the not to doesn't really quarrel with anyone about this. Is it Purusha or Prakriti? Is it Krishna? Is it the three gunas? Is it Father, Son, and Holy Ghost? Is it the Force from Star Wars? Is it atoms in the void? Well, in a way it is, and in a way it isn't. For all of these things are on the level of provisional or relative truth. And these things seem real to you when you're stuck on that level of illusion, where all these problems and questions only exist when we still view things with a perception of two instead of not two. And even to become enamored of oneness is a mistake. You have to see what things are not through careful awareness, telling apart the real from the unreal, the Atman from the non-Atman, and everywhere you look, you see not the one, but the not two. And as you look around, if you see things separate from you, you say, Neti, Neti, it's not this, it's not this. For all the different words, all the different descriptions will give you no positive knowledge of Brahman, because Brahman is the subject that is never an object, and so it cannot be known as an object is known. It is the knower, Shankar will say, the witness that is never witnessed. Now, if in class I would have given you this handout, which is a page from a beautiful book by Shankara called The Crest Jewel of Discrimination. Discrimination means how you discriminate between one thing and another, tell them apart, and see what's real and unreal. The great translation by Swami Pravananda and Christopher Isherwood, which is well worth reading. It's another one of these texts I've been reading since I was about 10 years old. And I'm going to read you a part of it. Sadly, we're not in class, so you can't read it for me. So I get to read it for you. Meditate upon the Atman as indivisible, infinite, like the all-pervading ether. Know it to be separate from the body, the senses, the vital energy, the mind, and the ego, those limitations imposed upon us by our ignorance. The ether, though it fills hundreds of vessels, such as jars and pots of grain and rice, and seem various and divided, is really one, not many. So also the pure Atman, when it is freed from the limitations of ego and mind, is one and one only. All things, from the Creator God down to a single blade of grass, are the apparently diverse names and forms of the one Atman. They are simply appearances and not real. Therefore meditate upon the Atman as one and infinite. The Atman is the ground and the reality. This appearance of a universe is only seen through our deluded eyes. When true knowledge arises, the Atman is revealed as existence itself, and the apparent universe cannot be seen apart from it. You may mistake a rope for a snake if you are deluded, but when the delusion passes, you realize that the imagined snake was none other than the rope. So alone this universe is none other than the Atman. The scripture says the infinite is where one sees nothing else, hears nothing else, knows nothing else. In the infinite, the scripture tells us, there is no duality, thereby correcting our false idea that existence is manifold. I am Brahman, the supreme, all-pervading like the ether, stainless, indivisible, unbounded, unmoved, unchanging. I have neither inside nor outside. I alone am. I am one without a second. What else is there to be known? So Brahman is not a thing. Brahman is not an object. Brahman is literally no thing, right? The subject that is never an object. So Brahman is being as not being, as things in normal experience exist, right? And the bliss of Brahman is not bliss as we experience it normally, right? But not bliss, because how could we understand a bliss that we don't feel but are, right? There's no object, see, there's no dualism. There's no anything to be aware of. Brahman, in fact, is absolutely unknowable, because to know means to know something. And we cannot know Brahman as a thing, because we do not come to know Brahman to be a subject knowing an object, but we become Brahman, the not two, right? You can only become it and not to know it. And if there are not two, then there cannot be someone knowing Brahman, can there? So in the Upanishads is the famous passage we looked at at the start of the class. The Atman is not like this, not like this. Neti, neti, for there is no other beside this Brahman. Therefore it is said, it is not like this. Now, since it is the not to, you can only become it, not know it. And notice, as we've talked about before in these philosophies, you're not being presented with a theory here, but with a darshana, where good in theory equals good in practice. Okay? So you might ask, right? Well, why does Shankara argue and do philosophy then? Or why do we talk about it at all? So I guess you already know part of the answer because we've talked about fingers pointing at the moon. According to these philosophers, there are all kinds of ways to be touched in what they call the relative plane of truth, which is where we all start out in a sort of dream state. And they do not say that the realms of relative truth aren't experienced, just that they're not real. Just like a dream is experienced, but it's not an ultimate or waking reality. We exist on the relative plane of truth, and there are many different ways to move to the plane of absolute truth. The different yogas, for example, move us in different ways from seeing things as two to not two. And if you're not aware, there are many kinds of yogas. Yoga means to yoke yourself to Brahman, and there are different ways you do that. There's the yoga of knowing, right? The yoga of being a scholar. You can use a scholar to meditate your way to Brahman. There's the yoga of devotion, where you devote yourself to a particular manifestation of Brahman, like Shiva or Krishna, and so on. And what we normally think of when we hear the word yoga, the physical exercises, that's called hatha yoga, and that's just a sort of subsidiary training to enable you to still and quiet your mind, to meditate and find your way to absolute truth. Yeah. Now, from the perspective of relative truth, we follow a path, seemingly, from here to there. But from the real perspective, we never moved at all. It was only an illusion that there were two. Think about the lecture on the transpersonal and how Wilbur talked about world spaces, right? When the pre-op child was looking at the two glasses of water, the tall, thin one and the small, fat one, the child couldn't see that the same volume of water was there, even though that reality was there. But then when he had the requisite cognitive development, he could see it. And suddenly he's in this world where the water has the same volume. So it was an other world to him until it became this world. And it's the same thing here. You don't go anywhere. You're always there. You just come to see it more clearly. Now, let's see if we can make sense of this, relatively speaking. Of course, only going to point a few fingers at the moon. Now, these philosophers say that the world of ordinary experience is an illusion. Let's play around with that idea a little and see what we can make of it. Right? The great Shankara's classic example in the passage we just read was of a rope mistaken for a snake. Or you could think of a leaf mistaken for a spider, or something like that. Now, why do we say that the rope is a snake, or that the leaf is a spider? It's through ignorance, avidya, which literally means not seeing, remember. We're not seeing what is really there. If we knew it was a rope, then there would be no illusion. But just plain ignorance would not seem enough to produce such an illusion. Because I'm ignorant of what's on the other side of that wall I'm pointing at here in my bedroom, doesn't make me see it as something it's not. So the kind of ignorance that makes me mistake a rope for a snake or a leaf for a spider is a certain kind of ignorance, Shankara says. If we analyze it, we see it has two aspects. There's an aspect that covers up the reality of the rope or the leaf and distorts what is there, making it seem to be something different, a snake or a spider. So if the world around us equals the snake and Brahman equals the rope, then Brahman is just not hidden, but distorted into the appearance of something else. And there's what they call vivartavada, a superimposition upon Brahman of what we call ordinary reality, what we see all around us right now. And in this way, the true reality is mistaken for the ordinary world of sense experience. Everyday experience is in the concealing distortion of Brahman, and this is what is called Maya, the universal illusion, like a universal dream. Everyday experience, what you and I are experiencing now, unless you've attained Brahman, is the concealing distortion of Brahman. And so this is Maya, the world appearance that conceals and distorts ultimate reality. And what we want to see now is that though the world illusion is experienced, it's not ultimately real. So imagine a magician. Maya is often presented as just that. She is a magician, enchanting us with illusion. A magician can make one coin appear to turn into many. Now it is here, now it is there, under here, behind your ear, until that one coin to the audience seems like a marvelous multiplicity. But that illusion exists for the audience only, but not for the magician. To her, the illusion is not real, and there's only one coin, not many coins. In the same way, from the standpoint of absolute truth, there is no plurality of things. There's no illusion. But to play with the analogy a little, the only way someone in the audience could see through the illusion of the many coins would be if they could somehow occupy the standpoint of the magician. They would have to become the magician to see through the illusion. So the world of the senses is unreal. In this world, things seem to change, for example. But for things to change, there would have to be things that change. And there are no things. It is very strange, these philosophers say. So the world of illusion is neither being nor non-being, Shankara says, in explaining this philosophy, but a mixture of both. Think about this with me for a minute. In fact, think about the nature of an illusion, right? There's first the non-perception of a present object, the rope, the construction of another object, the snake, and the imposition of one upon the other, the snake on the rope. Oh, look, there's a mistake in my spelling. I'll go up on the board and erase it. Avidya, or not seeing. So illusion is present as an illusion created by ignorance, and you can't really say that it exists in the sense of ultimate reality, or that it doesn't exist. It's neither being nor non-being. In one way, if you mistake a rope for a snake, the snake is there, because you may run away and scream. Or you may pick it up and say, she's a beauty, right? If you like snakes or are not afraid of them. And it's not non-existent like a square circle or an unmarried bachelor or the child of a barren woman. Non-existent is logically impossible or contradictory. But the status of illusion only lasts as long as the ignorance lasts. When we see the rope, the snake is gone, just as if it had never existed. It was unreal, we say. Oh, thank God, or maybe thank Brahman, I guess, which would be thanks to my true self. So does the empirical world of everyday experience exist or not? Well, we experience it, don't we? And you'd have to be a damn fool to deny the existence of our direct experience, right? And the seers are not stupid. They're no fools. They're not saying the world doesn't exist. That would be stupid. They're saying it's not real, in the sense that it's an illusion. For in another way, the world of everyday experience does not exist, is unreal, because we're experiencing the distortion of what is really there. So our experience of the world is not denied, just reclassified from a higher perspective. A constant analogy that is used is the difference between waking and dreaming sleep, right? As private dreams are to the waking world, so is the waking world of universal illusion to the experience of Brahman when we finally and fully wake up. So ordinary experience remains in the same way a dream remains after you wake up. You remember it. You don't have to deny that you experienced a dream. You don't have to deny that you experienced what you experienced it. The philosophers of Advaita Vedanta just say there is more to reality than you dreamed of. And unless you wake up, you cannot see that the dream objects are unreal. Within the dream, you have to regard them as real. And if you could somehow talk to someone in their dreams, you would need to talk to them in terms of their dream. And when you wake up, you don't deny that you were dreaming. And the dream objects have a kind of existence, an existence as dream objects. But being awake, you see there is a higher reality, a waking reality, and that dreams are unreal in relation to the waking world. So if you wake up into Atman realization, if you realize that I am Brahman, and there is none other besides, I am the not two, there is none other, the objects of the normal waking world of experience are unreal in relation to the Atman realization of union with Brahman, right? But it still exists in relation to the normal waking self. And the truth of all these things in the normal waking world become relative and provisional. Yet depending on the level of awareness you're at, relatively real. And you must discriminate or tell apart the difference between the levels and see what level of reality you are operating in and on to be truly knowing what is real and how to live in the light of it. Because an elephant is not real does not mean it does not exist. Remember again the story of the elephant. And that story is really important, so let's look at it again. And I like this story so much that I took a snapshot of the handout I usually give, where I sort of played with the translation and made it sound like exactly like I wanted. So this version's slightly different from the one I read to you last time. It's my own version, right? And I don't know if you can read this on the screen or not, but I'm going to read it to you. A guru had begun to teach her chela that this entire world is nothing but the Supreme Brahman, and further, that her own witnessing awareness is one with Brahman. Your very self, the guru said, is in a supreme identity with Brahman. The chela was elated. She exclaimed, "Everything is Brahman. Every you and I is its abode, and in everything around us dwells the supreme identity. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and Tattvamasi, you are that." Later, she was walking down the road, thinking of this truth her guru had taught her, feeling blissful and excited about this new truth. Suddenly a huge elephant came down the road in the opposite direction. The driver, riding on the back of the elephant, shouted out, "Clear the way! Clear the way!" as the numerous tinkling bells of the net covering of the great animal rang with a silvery peal to the rhythm of its mighty treading feet. But the student of the philosophy of Vedanta, full of exalted feelings and excitement, said to herself, "Why should I make way for the elephant? I am Brahman. The elephant is Brahman. Should Brahman be afraid of Brahman?" And so, thinking these sublime thoughts, she continued to walk down the middle of the road. But when Brahman met Brahman, the elephant swung its trunk around the waist of the philosopher and tossed her out of the way. She landed hard and was a little hurt, but more greatly shocked. Covered with dust, limping, bruised, and unsettled in her mind, she returned to her guru and told her about her confusing experience. The guru listened patiently, and when the tale was done, she told her, "Indeed, you are Brahman. So is the elephant. But why did you not listen to Brahman's voice calling to you from the driver, who is also Brahman, to clear the way?" So just because the world around us is not ultimately real doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If you see what these words that are a finger pointing at the moon are trying to tell you. In the Vedanta, there's a sort of riddle to sum this up. It is another finger pointing at the moon. to help you see what is not, so that you can learn to tell apart the real and the unreal. The blind one found the jewel. The one without fingers picked it up. The one with no neck put it on, and the one with no name gave it praise. No one is at play because it's just you at play. You are that, Tattvamasi. You are Brahman. Just look out for those elephants. Thank you for your kind attention, and we'll finish up our study of the Upanishads in our next video.